This is a video to show how you can use quizzes within Microsoft Forms to check pupil engagement and understanding. The final few slides will also touch on how to use forms for helpful feedback from pupils on how they find the lessons. I'll give you a possible scenario. Here's a task set for a Year 10 French class within Class Notebook. They've been told to watch an instructional video. The video is available in the Microsoft stream but also on YouTube. Within the video, I try to get engagement from the pupils every now and then, saying, has it sunk in? Inviting them to pause the video, read the questions, write down the answers, then resume the video for the answers. So I say, answers coming up, as a prompt for them to pause the video prior to seeing the answers. They can then check their answers. In this example, I repeated the exercise on 4 occasions to check their understanding. But how do you know that they actually did it? You can look at the class notebook to see if they filled it in. You can ask them to share the Word document in which they wrote the answers. Perhaps they can take a photo of the work and attach it to an email. And by the way, for that I'd recommend Microsoft Office Lens, as that converts the image into a document which you can then edit. They could have just copied your answers, so I suppose you don't really know if they understand it. So that's where I suggest having another layer of retrieval practice using a self-marking test like Microsoft Forms. So how do you create the quiz? You can learn by following really clear instructions which are available on the Microsoft site. And it's particularly worth noting that the category Forms includes 2 elements, forms and quizzes. I suggest that the quiz, which gives the chance of scoring answers, is really useful for an evaluation of understanding, while the form is useful particularly for collecting opinions about the effectiveness of the lesson. So, first of all, you need to open up the Forms app. You could do it either by going to the Office Home, where you can see the app directly at the top here, or if not, if it doesn't show there, then click on the waffle at the top left, which then opens up the apps, and you scroll down to Forms. You can see all the thumbnails of forms and quizzes I've already created here. Sadly, they can't be stored in folders yet, but hopefully that will come. Meanwhile, I think I'd recommend making sure that you name your quiz in a way which will make it easy to search for afterwards. So from this view, you can see 2 things that you can create. You can either create a form, a new form, or you can create a new quiz. So you select Quiz. First thing is to add a title to your quiz, and as I say, I'd make that searchable because you're not going to be able to put this in a folder. Then there's an option to write a fuller description. Again, perhaps include words which you're going to be able to search for. So also note that you don't have to save as you go along, it's all saved automatically. So you have your title and your description. So now you have to add the first question. So for that, you're going to click New, Add New. You then choose what question type you want. Now any quiz within it can have a mixture of question types. You don't have to use the same one for every time, but this particular one I'm going to make it really simple so that the questions are either right or wrong and can be self-marked. So we're going to go for multi-choice. By the way, do ignore the responses 22 there because I'm showing you a form which I have already issued, so I have had 22 replies to it. That wouldn't appear if you were doing this from scratch. And similarly at the top there it says 20 points because in the end it was worth 20 points. But that wouldn't appear normally until you finish the whole thing. Okay, let's pause on this slide because this is where you would fill in what you need for the question. The slide shows the main element. So first of all, you write the question. Then you type in the choices available to the students. The default is 2 options. So if you need to have another option, then you would click on that plus to add another one. When you've written in your options there, and there are 3 here, so here we've got which tier of entry would you be entered for in the speaking test, higher foundation according to how good I am at speaking, the same tier as for all my other skills, or there are no tiers for the speaking test. So I've just made it so that there are 3 options there. I've then got to tell it which one is the correct option so that when it's self-marking it needs to know that. So just by hovering over there you'll see these 3 symbols here. There's a trash can if you want to get rid of it. There's a little speech bubble if you want to give some feedback on to if someone selected that, what would you say to them? But then there's this tick. So by clicking on it, deliberately clicking on it, that's saying that is the correct answer. You then have got to say how many points it's worth. So I'm saying this particular one is worth 1. Could be, if it's something which has been very demanding, you deliberately give that a higher weighting. And it could be that you have a question where you expect them to tick 2 or 3. So you could say out of the following 6 which are in the past tense. So it could be that 3 of them are in the past tense. So you'd have to actually click that to allow for that. It could still be that you only give 1 point for that. But this is the thing that you'd have to click for multiple responses. As I've said before, if you want people to know why an answer is incorrect, if you want to, you could, by hovering, for example, over there are no tiers for the speaking test, you would have these symbols here. You'd click on the speech bubble and then you would write in what the correct answer is, for example, if you want to. Okay, the last thing you can do is that you can say whether or not it's a required one. So by clicking that, they can't go on to the next one until they've done it. They've got to answer that one. Okay, so click away to see what it looks like. I think it looks quite neat. And you can see from there, this is your view that you have set the question and you've said which is the correct answer. Obviously, when it's sent, they're not going to see that. So to go back to editing, you would hover over it again till it turns grey and a little hand appears and then you click. And then you start the process again. So here we've got our number 1. If you want the next question, then you would click Add New. Can I at this point say that one little trick is that if you have lots of very similar options, so for example, if the option is always yes, no, not mentioned or whatever, you could just click that copy one. It would copy the question, then you just have to change the question and the options stay the same. So that's a possibility. So again, on number 2, add the question, select the correct answer, add the points and set it as required. So you just go through that for each one. Again, click away so you can see what it looks like so far. We've got question 1 and we've got question 2. And repeat the process for 3. There are different types of questions you can have. So very quickly, you could go for text where they write free flow text there, and you can decide whether you want it to be a short answer or a long answer. You can have a rating one. How confident are you that you could explain this? And then there is one where you could put the date, which I suppose for linguists we could use that by writing the date in letters, and they've got to say what the date is, for example. And there are other options as well. If you get to the end, you look at that little downward caret there. You've got a ranking question. That could be used for languages, couldn't it? By putting something in a row, and they have to then reorder it. So you could give them a mark if they put the order in the correct way. This is something where if you wanted them to upload a file with their answer to something, you could do. And as far as your design goes, if you want to add another section, you could click section there. So let's imagine you've done all your questions. How can you edit it now? Well, you can click into the question and then you can see you've got these 4 symbols here. So number 1, if you want to, you can copy it if you need a copy somewhere else. If it's a question you no longer want, you just put it to the trash can. And then this is a neat thing that if you particularly want to change the order of things, then just by clicking on the up arrow, it'll take it further up, or the down arrow, it'll take it further down. And if you want to make it look prettier, or if you've got a picture which is related to the question, then you can click there to upload a question. So when it's all done, you can preview it to see whether that's what you want. You can see what it looks like if someone were looking at it on a computer. And you can see what it would look like if it's on a mobile phone, which I think looks really neat actually. If you're feeling artistic, you can change the background with colours, pictures provided, or here, if you want to, you can upload your own. If you want to, you could search for an image here, straight in the program itself. So for example, here I've put AQA French, found an image, and then I made that into the background. But it could be, I think, no, I'd rather just have a plain colour. It's always good to know what the settings are. There are default settings which are normally the sensible ones, but just check them. If you click on this ellipsis, Somebody's called it, I think it was Jane Basnett called it the gold dust that you get within Microsoft. If you click on those three dots, often you've got lots of other options. So, for example, do you want to display the results? Do you want them to see what their results are straight away? You would have that clicked. Decide who can answer. If this is a quiz which is just for school, which is what it normally is the case, you just have it's only for people in my organisation. And I would recommend that you always know who it is, know their name. Also make it so that it's just a single attempt, so they can't keep going back and changing it. Next one is the assignment live? So are you accepting responses? At the point at which you decided, right, that's it, I've got to close it now, you would uncheck that and they couldn't answer anymore. And then if you're really keen to know whether or not they've done it, then you could click on the notifications there. So the quiz is done, and now you've got to share it. So you would click on share, and here you've got three main choices. Why are you sharing? Is it to send and collect responses? Is it to share as a template? Or is it to collaborate? Let's go through those. If it's to send and collect responses, which is the main thing that we normally use this for, you think about, well, who are you sending it to? And normally it would be for only people in my organisation can respond. Then you think, okay, so how am I going to send it? The most common way of sending it is just by clicking a link. So you can see that picture there of the link. You would click there, and then you would copy this address, and that you could then just put in a document or wherever you want. There we are. That's the one just for the link. And then what you could do, you could insert here. What I've done is I just inserted the link into a class notebook. So going back again, there was the task they had to do. That's what they had to fill in. And then you can see here, all I did was click in the link and it actually inserted the form. It was really quite neat, I think, to do that. Or you can insert it into an email and they would click on it and go straight there. The second way that you could share it is with a QR code. So that would be, I suppose, particularly for people who are not accessing this in the normal way and perhaps need, they're looking at it on a piece of paper and they're using their phone to be able to get it. You could also embed it into a web page, or you can send it direct by email message. That's the main way we'll be sharing it. I suppose amongst colleagues, it could well be that you've done something, you think, oh, I think somebody else could use that. The way you would share it is you wouldn't share the link to the actual thing itself, otherwise your colleague would be answering it. You would share a template. So by clicking on this, you're really basically giving them a copy that they could then put into their area and use for their own class. And the third reason you might be sharing it is to collaborate. It could be that you're putting together a quiz and you'd like someone else to be working on the same document. So you would share to collaborate. There's your copy that you would give, and then you would click for somebody to receive it. So you've designed your quiz and you've sent it off. So when you want to have a look to see how people did, you open up the form again, you've got the questions there, and then you look at the responses tab, and look, we've got 22 people who have answered. With one click you can then see really a summary. You can see the number of responses which you've had, 22, the average score out of 20 was 17. There's a pie chart for each of the questions to show the proportion of people getting each answer, and you've got the actual numbers themselves giving each answer. You'll probably want to have a little bit more detail than that though, so you can see here you've got review answers, post scores. Let's go to review answers. So you can review by people or questions. So if you were to click on the people tab, you then select the person whose scores you want to see, and there you can see individually for each question what this particular person got right, that's green, and what they got wrong, which is red. And if you want to, you can give written feedback on that. So this one, how many parts are in the test? They said 2. You would then click on that little sign there, give feedback, and you could write in something like 3 parts, role play, photo card, and conversation. So you can do that by person and see them. Or it could be that you want to look at each question and see what the sort of responses were per question. So there, click on question, select the question, and then they tell you how many people got which response. There we are. And there's another example there. So they did a bit better on that one. You could also post scores. If it hasn't been marked automatically, then you would click post scores and then they would know what their marks were. This is also, again, quite good for a glance to be able to see how people did. The bit I like best is this. You can open the scores in a spreadsheet. So you would click on Open in Excel. There's the file name. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You do your usual deciding where you wanted to save it, and then you can open it. And this is where I think it's fantastic. You've got all of this detail about how people did on the quiz. So what have we got there? You can analyse it. First of all, the sequence in which they did it, who did it first. You can see when they started the test and when they finished it. So that's quite powerful to know how long they spent on a test. Email address and name, obviously, but here you've got their scores, and you've even got for each individual answer what did they get. But it's very powerful and very quick to get that result. And then it could be that you want to reset the test to individuals if they need to, and the way you do that would be to go to that little gold dust, the ellipsis there, and do you remember you clicked it to say you just wanted one response per person? In other words, they couldn't attempt it again. If you just uncheck that, and then you could then issue that quiz to the person who you really want them to do it again. I'm just going to finish off with 6 slides to say how you could use forms possibly to evaluate the lesson. So I've just shown you quizzes, which is self-marking, really, really good for testing understanding. But also if you went to forms, it's a bit small here, but I have just put 6 questions there. The way you edit a form is exactly the same really as a quiz. It just is it doesn't carry marks with it. So a simple 6 questions could give you a lot of information. So I've since realised you don't need to put in your name because that can go in there anyway. I've said how you're getting on with your distance learning. Then it was to do with how long did you spend on it, and then how confident are you with, there were 2 learning objectives there, each one extremely, somewhat neutral, somewhat not, extremely not. That you can imagine was one where I just copied that into being question 5 as well. And then an open-ended one. Are there any other areas from the work we've done in this lesson where you feel you need more help? And just as with the quiz, you can then get responses and you get a snapshot as to how they felt things were going. And you can view the results. That's the end.